particularly on stream, but we do have some penalty bans in place for teams that tend to either make late roster changes or show up potentially maybe in late. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see if any of that production will be letting us know in our ears as to whether or not another ban comes through. But like you mentioned, we should be seeing maybe not in these early games.
Right.
I would imagine in the later games when teams are a bit more fleshed out in how they feel the meta plays out. Yeah, Wraith, Infernus. Okay, actually, never mind. There's our bans, Lady Geist and Yamato, which seem like outrageous bans to me. I know the Lady Geist can feel really strong. The Yamato, I feel like, has felt a little underwhelming. But again, this comes from watching a lot of NA games. And then that early priority quickly goes over to that Wraith being picked up by Fluffy Gangsters.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of, I will say, skill set oriented advantage kind of put in here regarding some of these initial ones for Team 1 Fluffy Gangsters. And what also could just realistically be for these teams something they don't want to face into given the strategies they might potentially play around here. Of course, for Team 1, the Kelvin, a solid pickup within the threshold here, and a presence regarding the supports that I expected to see when we shifted over to the EU region, especially gaining what is some of the dominance and not quite those DPS targets. I like that Fluffy returns in their own right with Wraith in response there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's maybe not just the only DPS that we see picked up in the early.
Yeah, especially with Infernus making it through, right? That's a decent pickup to just take away, to try and deny. Also a strong solo laner. It will eventually be that Pocket to be the second pick for Fluffy Gangsters, which is obviously Pocket is Pocket.
Still great.
Haven't been a whole lot of changes. Yeah, you're really just looking for, hey, can I hit 4 of my barrages? If yes, I'm going. If no, then I'm going to wait until I hit 4 of my barrages, and then I'm going to go right back to the top of my chart. If yes, I'm going to look to engage. The scary part about this is recently I've seen a few players take Pocket into the solo lanes, and it doesn't feel great because we're so spirit heavy right now. And Pocket, unlike Vindicta, who just got this awesome buff where she doesn't start in the negative resistances, Pocket does. He's still minus 15% spirit resist right off the rip.
Right.
So can feel a little squishier in lane. I mean, even throughout the game as well, but later you're a little bit more glass cannon, which means it feels okay to, you know, be squishy because you are outputting the damage. In the early game, it can sometimes be tough to get through lane.
Meanwhile, Team 1 response, like I said earlier, are going to be continuing on that train of the supports. We talk about spirit damage and what it has meant for the Mirren meta in recent time periods. Ivy has been an absolute staple, a pressuring pick, even though maybe not directly as, we'll say, oppressive as we talk about with those main damage dealers. Things like, of course, the bomb and anything else that really ramps up late game, especially with the mobility that you can provide for this team to get them into the action, can be an absolute threat here to Fluffy Gangsters as time goes on. I'm not keen, though, on the Vindicta, something that I personally have seen time out and time again struggle to really get going. Can be incredibly effective put into the right hands, but optimally needs some of the best play that we can potentially see to really shine, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Although the Vindicta, like I mentioned, did just recently get those buffs, used to start with minus 10 bullet resistance, which is outrageous because then it feels bad to lane into an Ivy. So it recently just did get a little bit beefier, but yeah, it can really struggle to get going online, especially when, you know, in this mid game, in the later game, a lot of the times we're seeing fights take places in alleyways or under the overpasses or in roofed areas. And that's not where Vindicta wants to be. Now, on the opposite side, Shiv is picked up, and Shiv is an absolute nightmare right now. So that is a huge grab for Fluffy Gangsters, and they've got themselves, 3 pieces of the pie that feel really good. You've got your front line assassinate if you want Shiv to be in the front line. He's very hard to kill. And then you've got your Pocket and your Wraith just ripping damage on the outside. It's met by an Abrams. I love Abrams. I think Abrams is great. I think right now his kit I think there's something a little wonky going on. I don't know if that's been patched in the most recent patch, but Abrams is just, I feel like everybody wants an Abrams on their team, and Team 1 have got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just good setup. You come through to play at the beginning, and it's something that they'll continue to make a decision around regarding some of their early draft picks, especially with the Viscus as well now secured here for Team 1. I mean, There have been a wealth of go buttons now provided for Team 1 here. We talk about ease of access, especially getting into some of these early fights and what you can do around them. It is the perfect opportunity. I mean, really, it's just opportunity cost when we talk about any one of the mid to late game team fights now, because a combo between, yes, the Abrams being as far frontal forward with things like that Kelvin and Viscous as major support beacons as well. This is going to be incredibly hard to avoid if you're potentially caught out single target, lone, doso oso as the fluffy gangsters at any given point there. The only thing I do worry about is we are missing a lot of that damage presence, and it has not been decided as of yet.
Yeah, and this is so interesting to me. I was going back to check one of the comps from yesterday, but this kind of triple support comp that this is something that I see a lot of from the European teams. Your Kelvin,
yes,
your Ivy, and your Viscous. A lot of times in North America, you only get 2 of the 3, but Team 1 have rounded it out with basically a comp that says it's going to be hard for you to kill anybody. You've got so much healing in this comp. You've got the cube. You've got the frozen shelter, which is a bigger cube. It's an ice cube. This is a comp that'll really keep these carries alive. So that Vindicta, maybe not feeling as squishy as we may have predicted. That 7 as well feels tough to kill, feels very strong, but is one of those heavy mouse 1 characters with that power surge that is just going to be incredibly survivable, not only behind the big blue tank and Abrams, but the 3 supports that have been pieced together by Team 1. And then surprisingly, we get a Paradox making it all the way through and eventually being picked up by Fluffy Gangsters. And I will say it again, I said it way too much the other day, but EU Paradox is a different breed of Paradox. They really make this pick look super scary. And I'm not saying that NA doesn't, but EU just does it differently.
And it is definitely a skill diff when it comes down to it, though, especially with that Paradox pickup. And the fact that I see it as late as it has been secured in this entire draft doesn't tell me it's got heavy priority, especially given the fact that it is and has been very strong, well within the meta for so many of these teams to play around it.
Your Sapphire Flame and Zephyr, we are underway.
Early as it be. It's not for these players, Tanner. Primed and ready to go. They've been waiting for this moment across the board here. We'll start off with Yo on that Wraith, notably in that duo lane alongside, there you go, that Paradox to set this team up. That is an absolute wombo of an opportunity here, notably to play out of Broadway early and at any given point be an absolute target.
Yeah, the Paradox Wraith lane is going to feel pretty oppressive, especially into, again, that Vindicta that a little bit earlier is going to be waiting to get that ultimate, try and drop some of that assassinate damage to Kelvin there to keep her alive. And speaking of staying alive, it might be difficult here for our Ivy friend as the binding word comes down, but able to sneak away and eventually leave the tunnels. But Warden's gun is no joke. You do not want to play with this Warden who's playing this nice little head glitch here just outside of range.
Really applying some nice pressure there now with the response back into the thick of things with Mirage on the case here. We'll take advantage, finally getting some of that sustained clear. Looking for some of that early setup, though, when we do talk about the wave pressure. I like the fact that they've put, of course, the likes of Jukes up on the high ground there to pressure out this roster in its entirety. That's going to at least be a huge boon towards the major soli we'll see from them. But in response, CJ's picking up early wipes here against Dakar.
You're, try to be unkillable in the face beefcake. And in the early game, especially if your Shiv isn't picking up the bloodletting early, which you probably don't do until, level 3, that Infernus is going to feel pretty resilient with the Infernal Resilience. Or not the Infernus, excuse me. The Abrams with the Infernal Resilience. Right. There we go. Abilities, heroes, all of that. So yeah, that's a big pickup. And it makes sure that your Shiv isn't getting put ahead. And this pressure lane that we talked about in the Paradox and Wraith is actually being forced all the way back here. Tret does pick up the kill onto time. Unfortunately, that Kelvin getting a little too aggressive there in the Paradox. A little too healthy to allow that to happen. And just when things were looking good for a moment, they get flipped on their head.
Right, that opportunity to capitalize leads to a place of separation, especially when we talk about Vindicta taking advantage of the flight, right? That's your extra spirit damage, you're up to the sky, you're going to be playing for what could be that final wipe against Yo, and instead, it's with the realm of the cross into the shadows there that leads to the end of time, and I honestly think you find that one even a bit more straightforward. You're going to go down no matter what if you're going in. You might as well continue to send it past the catwalk there, which is something they optimally, well, in the end, didn't try to do. We'll see, though, in response this time around, Hito Origami is picked apart here now, stuck around in that lane for just a little too long.
Yeah, and another kill, right? Tret picking up another one. So this lane that's supposed to be safe is anything but that now. NT gonna try their hand to take down this Viscous. It can feel difficult when you got two supports in this lane, but Cube is gone. Health bars are low. Rockcadster gonna stay alive for a little bit longer. Stoneform gonna find the stun. Can they flip this one on its head? NT's healthy, so this Mirage is gonna keep pushing on forward. Still beneath the veil there is the Viscous, who eventually goes down, and they make good on that kill. They couldn't find the Ivy, but across the map, Tret is doing it again. I told you, man, this Paradox is a different beast in Europe.
As a result, I'm so shocked to see it highlight on this early draft as late as it was here. And the greatest part about it is the fact that, especially with Wraith picking up the majority of that soul pickup in that early lane, I know it is shared for the beginning of the game, but just seeing the wealth of the at least pressure, we see some kills early, it leaves me at least knowing that when we do get to the mid-game status, we are going to see Tret on, of course, this Paradox be able to pick up a good chunk of a lead for themselves. And now, I mean, it's when it rains, it pours, Tanner. There's a Marl down again, less than 40 seconds, straight back to lane, and immediately eliminated.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours. It's definitely starting to pile on for Fluffy Gangsters, as they're not only making plays in their specific lanes, but able to make plays elsewhere. It actually looks like the Vindicta is moving around the map a little bit as they're trying to get something back, and we're all going to toss out that lightning ball. Not as big as it once was, but they do end up finding the elimination onto Yo, but not before, again, that Kelvin just gets a little too deep and gets punished for it.
Even when it's a win, it is something that is punished here from Fluffy Gangsters. They're still dominantly in the lead, even with a little bit of the lane swap there to get things into a place of safety. Now, it is going to be a Marl moving across here, sending Times into that solo lane completely on his own to take it toe-to-toe against Goes, which I honestly think is, I mean, it's going to be a challenge in itself. We're going to see full rotates, though. I want to pay attention to that side lane. 3 here to play against Go off of the edge of that.
And Pulsar was looking for something, but gets nothing. Is just going to drop that ult for the camp, as those have just spawned. And yeah, they were looking for something on the Goes. Unfortunately, they get nothing. Now, a little bit under fire here. Frozen Shelter comes through, and that'll buy some time. Unfortunately, Tret maybe biting off more than he can chew. No, still healthy here in this fight as they fight between Walker and Guardian, and they're still able to pick up time.
It's still, even with the changes that we try to make on these Guardians, it still isn't enough to pressure out, especially once you're at that 7-minute mark and we're talking about all these major ultimates online. I mean, teams are free to play out over on the edge. They're more than happy to play a strafing game against the damage of the Guardian, especially off of wave push there. So you have to be respectful, especially with so many early leads picked up here on some of these initial lane advantages.
And that hurts. It hurts to invest the Frozen Shelter to try and survive, and then ultimately not survive. So Time has been having a rough one at that in this early game, but that's what we expected. We expected this Paradox Wraith to be big bullies. Now we'll see if maybe it can get turned around on them. Taking flight,
There's
getting
that
swapped the rip from the sky, but healed up for a moment as Time works to keep his teammate alive. Unfortunately, it's all for naught as Time is forced to head for the hills, but he's hit by the telekinesis, and how deep do they want to go? We saw him between Guardian and Walker. Will they do it again to find yet another kill on this Kelvin? Slowed down, stopped in his tracks, but allowed to survive as the card trick won't quite do it. No, but he still dies anyways!
you gotta pay your respects to that coverage there. It is not a clean line of sight on your way out. As a result, it's an easy pickup for Tread, who's been absolutely a force on this Paradox there. Now, healing right back in play. You're going to take away the denizens from the opposite side here as we start to see downtown become, well, I mean, redistrict.
Yeah, this is looking grim. We've got a duel here. It looks like Mirage was looking to teleport. I thought that's what I was hearing, but maybe not. It is just going to be a kill onto our 7 once more. So Amaral is not winning that duel against the Pocket. I don't know who picks up those pieces either, because that Pocket now sitting at 8K. Paradox sitting at 8K. Warden also feeling pretty darn good. I mean, the Mirage has kind of become, you know, if anything, a backstage actor in playing support here and just allowing stuff like this to happen. Dakar picks up a big kill onto CJ there. And that Shiv is now starting to win with a little bit of help those duels in his lane alone. And that'll lead to another Guardian falling
Final
here.
one.
Yep, the final Guardian. The flex slot already unlocked, right? Because we're playing on the new patch with the changes. But that's your front line, right? That's the tier 1 defense. You are no longer safe to leave your walkers here, especially when that fluffy Gangsters have been running Team 1 down.
All right, literally running them down. A triple setup here over towards the edge. You might try to set up with the Storm Cloud, but you can see how quickly the damage has become an absolute front here for Fluffy Gangsters. Unable off of that survivability, and now shifting just across here over towards that Broadway side to set themselves up for, once again, another major push against the Walker. This time around, 4 members in play, and hit Origami. I mean, they have no choice. They just have to walk away. Just leave this one be. That's going to be an easy double Walker pickup secured.
That's heartbreaking. I mean, we talked about early games. 10 minutes into this one, we have 2 Walkers down, 4 Guardians that have fallen as well. Mid-boss has just spawned, and this feels like one of those situations where the first mid-boss could be the bait mid-boss. Usually we see that later in the game where you get the mid-boss down to 60% health and then, you know, force Team 1 to fight you because they, they have to make that decision. And I would think, if not going for this completely, they 60% this, force Team 1 into them, and then take the rest of what they can in way of Walkers and Base Guardian.
The real question now at this point is, what response are we going to try to see, at least on the response? Immediately, Kudzu Bomb down in the center with the telekinesis following through almost immediately. You're thankful Ivy is quick, but I don't think it's going to be quick enough. Notice the massive separation from Team 1 here. It's literally 4 against the world, and Pulsar does manage to steal it. Sneaks in last minute. This is a breath of fresh air for a team that is absolutely choking.
Yeah, and I mean, you said, what do we do to get back into it? If anything, you've bought yourself some time. You've bought yourself getting caught out. You've bought yourself a bad team fight for the next 3 minutes. You've also got a little less pressure on your lanes because you're going to have those souped up troopers. So that is absolutely huge here. Just dancing on the outside, flirting with the thought, but eventually getting it done. And now they're looking to get some kills on the back end. CJ, however, does get traded, but NT going down. We're starting to see this Team 1 squad come alive.
At least for now, taking advantage of a lot of the major separation here on that Fluffy Gangsters roster, notably being a little bit too proactive towards the Greenwich and York side. Now, straight into the Frozen Shelter will finally be potentially the tomb here for times. Picked apart over towards the edge. We look for potentially Tret now on that recovery. Going to be able to successfully walk away. Can't say the same here for Pulsar, though. You got to find your way out of that. Far from the Walker a bit earlier, especially how quickly with these cooldowns. Shiv's already back into it. We just saw him wiped out. He's already back in the action, securing that next kill.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt too bad because some players had that Rejuvenator, but now that CJ dies again without the Rejuvenator and you're waiting 25 seconds, that Ivy death timer was also pretty long for Pulsar there. That didn't feel great at 21 seconds. So just when you kind of started clawing your way back into this game, you lose your handhold and start to fall once more. And now there's only 2 Rejuvenators still standing here in the hands of Immoral and Rakadster. We'll see if maybe they can make the best uses out of that. Find themselves inting in a side lane for one of these objectives where they do get one, right? First Guardian goes down to see if they can scoop up another one purple.
Straight across there. Nice earn from Yo. That's going to lead to a full team grouping over towards the edge of this walker, which is already picked apart in its entirety here. You have to be respectful here. CJ, the rest of the crew, you've got to walk away. Ivy looking for that with the airdrop, a kudzu to be placed, and it won't find much as CJ's pick. The kinetic carbine could have been the end there, but just barely with that. Watcher's Covenant. Do we see the survivability built around the regen? And this is now major problems. We see team roster split, pressure once again, Greenwich towards that side lane, that final walker. It just doesn't seem like Fluffy Gangsters are appropriately adequating enough time to either one of these side lanes to play defensively, right? It feels like they're always on this back foot where when they respond, when they play to protect a walker, they're far too late already, and a side lane's already being set up to destroy your other.
Yeah, they do a good job, however, that being Team 1, in not losing everything, right? That walker probably was going to go down, and unless you're fighting 6v6, and then you might die, as we see some of that majestic leap tech coming out from Goes. But they make good on the Guardian Broadway, the Guardian Park, and they picked up the walkers out that way as well. So although Team 1 seemed to have lose a lot there in way of deaths and losing their third walker themselves, they managed to answer back with something. So it's not they didn't lose
all
everything.
is not lost.
Yes, thank you for saving me there because it's too early for my brain.
You're good. While our players may be EU, we are bright and early up in the morning. Granted, that says a lot more about our sleep schedules than it probably says about the time zones. Either way, for CJ and crew, now on that farm, reset, earn back into play once again. Not something that has held a lot of priority, and understandably so. While we do love to talk about that AP differential and so many other things that come with the earn, I'm notably more... there's more priority to be put down when we talk about how quick this game is moving forward, because when you have potential engagements like this ripe for the picking, you've got to be a lot more careful than that. It's fun to pick up those solos, but they're not solo no longer.
No, and you know what feels great too is I think in the most recent patch, we've also shifted away from team worth to player value. So picking up the 18k Wraith is nice. How much more can they get here? Seismic impact to get things started. Last stand coming through from our Warden, and the Frozen Shelter has since subsided. Now the Warden is stuck between 5, but can they make good on this kill? So slippery and so hard to pick up. He'll sneak up the stairs and try to get away, as unfortunately it's blue in the kill feed, which means Team 1 on the losing end, but they answer back. They scoop up the kill onto our Paradox and Tret. The snipe's not going to be good enough for Origami. Instead, it's NT to eventually put an end to the reign of terror for that Vindicta. And all said and done, after Wraith went down, a 3 for 3, in what was a lopsided team fight, Fluffy Gangsters could have lost a whole lot more there.
I agree. I honestly think it was... could have potentially gone better for Fluffy Gangster. In the end, it is going to result probably in this base being cracked open here, especially with that side lane pressure. Meanwhile, once again, CJ getting into the thick of it. Rescue beam, of course, from the Kelvin. Pull that one back. Pay their respects. Like the fact that we see, of course, that Arctic beam coming out and play there. And in the meanwhile, name is picked apart in the process of that chase. You get your success, but you have to recognize if you're going to be deep there, Fluffy Gangsters is already playing a side lane split. They had already been putting so much, at least appropriate pressure from Go over towards the edge, and now Ivy is just a little too short.
Yeah, can't
maybe
quite
Abrams
get
is taller.
Oh, man, that's okay. There we go. Now it's starting to move back there. That was a big play too. I thought with Polestar going to pick up the urn, I was thinking, man, this seems like a pretty rough spot to be in. I also think we didn't get the visual or the POV of Ivy. one of two things
No.
happened. Either one, Pulsar mistimed the ultimate timing in grabbing the urn and eventually just ran it and ended up running into the team and started fighting on downtown Broadway, or opted into just dropping the urn, did get the ult timing good, and picking that fight. Either way, it was a good fight. They walk away with that one with the urn still in their hands. They picked up a kill, but they're not able to deliver. And now we get that Ivy ultimate.
Jeez.
And this time, again, it's to engage here into 4 and now just needs to survive. But this is buying a window for that urn in the hands of CJ to keep moving forward to try and get something for this team.
And meanwhile, they've got to apply pressure there because with Ghost successfully wiping over towards the edge and now on the response against CJ, even with that Earl return, your roster could be potentially, yes, picked apart there. There goes CJ. This is now a 4v6 situation with all waves pressuring. It's only hit Origami there over towards the edge of Park Avenue. That is going to be at least on some kind of response. But, I mean, this is a perfect setup for Rejuvenator. And this time around, Tanner, far more safe.
Yeah, nobody in the vicinity to try and take this one away. Pulsar's headed that direction, but shouldn't make it there in time. As that comes down, will be secured this time around. So their second mid boss, their first Rejuvenator, but now this is a very scary prospect of, and for the next 3 minutes, Team 1's way back into the game and finding a pick or maybe taking a favorable fight. Right. That window is closed for the time being. And speaking of picks, Pulsar getting caught out there.
That's
Pettit
just
Carbine
mean.
leads to a kill. And yep, they top it off with, well, a 3v1, a very unnecessary one at that.
Mind you, the telekinesis utilized too there from the Wraith for the. That's what I mean. It's just in certain situations, that's the wombo, that's the combo. And, you know, end of the day, though, it's a lot of investment for an IV on the sideline. And some tools definitely utilized there. But, you know, pressure's pressure, right? And it's definitely been something to play in the favor of the Fluffy Gangsters for a majority of this game. And while they're not currently applying it to these lanes, I understand where they come from. And now with that urn pickup, we see where their priorities lie.
Man, the stuff you can do with Majestic Leap. We saw it earlier, but just to see it again, you can use the first portion of your Majestic Leap to take to the skies and then spend some of your stamina and still use that final portion, which you see there. It's the up dash, down dash, moving around the map all crazy. It really allows you to cover great distances. And a lot of these players have sick movement without that, so then you start implementing some of these movement items, and I mean, it's a different game, man.
Right. It elevates the pace of the play more than anything, right? Getting across the map suddenly becomes a second discussion rather than something that feels separated here. Meanwhile, we are separating the pack. A kudzu bomb will do that, as stinky as it may be. I don't know if it's stinky, but ultimately it looks stinky. Either way, now with the separation of Fluffy Gangsters on both sides here with Greenwich now the priority, you gotta see what kind of defense Times can play. Affliction deep into the back line.
Well, they just need to hang on, right? They just need to survive because across the map, CJ's trying to get something done, and it does look like there's going to be a response. NT going to head back to the base to try and stop this one, but just looking to open things up. And yeah, this is a win. Your 7 died early. Your 4 people holding onto this base the best you can. Do you get something on the other side? That's most important. And do you continue to get wiped here? Because Pulsar's already been taken down. Rakadster is just around the corner from falling as well, forced to use that cube on himself. CJ and NT are still dueling across the map while Fluffy Gangsters walk in and kick the door down. And Marl spawns and dies. That is a story we've seen throughout the day, throughout the game, but it's starting to get turned around. CJ wins the fight up top, and the rest of Team 1 are winning the fight in their base.
There you go, CJ on the remnants now to potentially pick up that shrine. You can see it ticking away there in that upper right corner. And better than that, even with CJ down and the shrine not quite picked up there, they are able to follow up Daikar over on the side and eliminate a Shiv in an incredible moment. That staggered timer is going to be absolutely huge here for the likes of Team 1 to feel a lot more safe in how they respond to getting back some of that base pressure. It isn't perfect, though. It isn't perfect though. You got to respect things like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's tough. And I mean, whatever. Get Wraith.
I mean, hey, Shadow Weave. I mean, it makes it hard. All right, you're not always going to catch that Wraith coming, and ultimately, it has now become a monster of a Wraith at this point. You are talking potentially mid to late game, 27,000 just behind the likes of Jukes, surprisingly, on the Warden, but in the presence of, yes, easily able to take not just one target down, but multiple in the space of a good fight there. I mean, we talk about itemization. You have the full upgraded telekinesis. I mean, this is a team fight entity that you have to respect now.
Absolutely. You got to be wary of not only what the Wraith does in single target damage, but what she now brings to the team fight with that ultimate maxed out. I do want to talk about Immoral having a rough game. I'm gonna hold that thought. Maybe Juice looking to get.
Oh, that's that.
Okay. Yeah, just pops the last stand. Only a minute cooldown, so not too bad. I would imagine we'll be in this game for longer than a minute before it closes out. But
no,
Immoral has had a rough game. But he's sitting at 30k souls. He's kind of managed to just put his head down and find a way to stay in this game through farming. And I want to see the 30k 7. There it is. Huge pickup onto Jukes. He's ultless. You run him down, you take him down, you find a big kill, and now you start to push forward. It's been a 10k soul lead for the entirety of the game because Team 1 refused to give up, and now they're starting to piece together objectives behind kills.
This team just needed time to catch up, right? It was a comp that we had discussed, has a lot of potential when we do get into those 6v6 or even more limited 4v4s, but with the damage profile being so heavily oriented towards getting these supports some major itemization off of what souls that can be shared and things like the 7 coming online, there's a reason why we see the early game struggle, right? As much as it did. Sadly for Fluffy Gangsters, potentially maybe getting a little too comfortable. We saw so many solo pickups and not enough pressure oriented to how they needed to when it came to where they were on a major lead. Something that I love about Deadlock that we've seen is even if you have these incredibly high kill, explosive early games, there isn't this massive super lead when we talk about the soul differential that teams are able to take advantage of. Now granted, telekinesis, a paradoxical swap, I mean, that's potentially enough to take advantage of. Out teleporting away straight to the sky. The leap will be safe. And with Jukes down, this is actually a big win for Team 1.
Yeah, the Warden again just going a little too deep. Time wall not timed perfectly there. And that's going to be Tret now being punished. Stuck inside. So much use to take down the Paradox. But it's a second kill in this team fight picked up for Team 1. And now only 6,000 souls separate these two teams. And mid-boss just spawned. Fortunately for Fluffy Gangsters, Team 1 are not healthy enough to beat feet in that direction just yet. As we go back to Immoral here, this is our 35k 7 just ripping the damage. And because of that, everybody from Fluffy Gangsters backing away and giving respect.
Well, I will say, though, as wrong as that fight starts out and they lose to in the early game, it is a massive response, notably from Fluffy Gangsters, with Goes coming in there on this pocket, who has been an absolute boon to this roster, especially towards, or really throughout this entirety of the game here. And now we'll set them up again for another Rejuvenator. This time around, especially with Kelvin in play, won't have that Frozen Shelter available up to delay, but we need to prioritize, make sure we're setting up for that major punch. Telekinesis seems to be the thing that will make sure it happens.
I mean, it was close again. Hit Origami jumped into the pit to try and make a play there and maybe get everybody tethered with that stake out of range of the Rejuvenator there.
Right.
But unfortunately, all for naught. And now, kind of as like a last-ditch effort, that was, hey, let's see if we can get in here and try and take this. Because if not, this is what you're left with, right? 4 people have to try and defend this base.
Struggles galore, 20 seconds on the clock. The best thing about it is you still do have that patron transformation. Juke in the back line here, pressuring it out once again with that ultimate invested.
Yeah, pops the last stand, forces the Ivy out of the fight, and they pick up another kill on the Viscous, who goes ultless. No goo ball used to try and survive. That means the cube is out of the fight as well. Now we've got our Kelvin, we've got Hit Origami back into the mix here, but what can they bring to the fight? Stormcloud goes through. This is not going to stop the transformation, but it might stop the push for just a moment longer. 30 seconds on the clock. Paradox also out of this fight, however, so a 5v5, make it 4 on the side of Team 1 as Jukes picks up a huge kill. Meanwhile, CJ's taking the base again. Frozen Shelter to try and buy some time, but he needs to get back and help his team. Are they gonna do enough to stall? Time hangs on for as long as he can. Pulsar nearing death here in the weakened Patron, starting to get chipped away. The Paradox respawns will stop CJ in his tracks, and this is anything but a base race as Fluff start. That's for sure. Fluffy Gangsters really crept out ahead. We kind of expected it. We know that they had some strong lanes into others. I think CJ showed some signs of brilliance in lane, but then we just saw how strong Yo and Tret could be on that Paradox Wraith, because in Europe, again, Paradox is anything but a support. It's just extra damage, go, go, go. You see it there, 11 kills for Tret. But yeah, what a game that turned out to be. I thought we were shaking.